Hey everyone, quick warning that what I'm about to discuss contains major spoilers for the Pixar movie Turning Red. So if you have not yet seen Turning Red, well then pause this video now and go watch it first. No, really. Go now. Go watch it. I'll wait. Have you watched it? Okay, great. Then you may continue.
Let's go.
So I just finished watching Pixar's Turning Red and wow. I have to be honest, I loved it. Once again, Pixar has found a way to take a serious topic and through a combination of metaphors and cute characters and amazing storytelling, has found a way to give us an emotional crisis. Am I asking too much of my family? Are my kids really excited to do things with me, or are they just doing it to not hurt my feelings? Should I be searching under my kids' beds for sketch pads, secret concert tickets, or movie cameras? Should I give my kids more freedom and space, or would that just result in them starting a secret t-shirt business? Can I get one of those t-shirts? Because they actually look pretty cool. For the most part, I feel like the movie's pretty straightforward. Meilin reaches a certain point in her life and things start to change. She's interested in boys, the relationship with her mother starts to shift, and she transforms into a giant red panda. Meilin is mostly able to keep the panda under control, but the pressures of having to choose between the person she is with her family and the person she is with her friends, it just eventually becomes too much for her, and she snaps, letting out the panda and storming away from her family. That's when the real trouble begins, as her mother also lets out her long-dormant panda. And let's just say this one's a little less cuddly. But that brings up the question, why is there such a huge difference between Meilin's panda and her mother's? Well, today I explore just that. So I have to let you know up front that I subscribe to something called the Pixar theory. Now in this theory, it's thought that all the Pixar movies are all connected in one really large timeline spanning universes and planets, but are all in the same general timeline. So everything from Brave to Monsters, Inc., from Toy Story to Turning Red, they're all connected. My thoughts today are going to work under the assumption of the Pixar theory, but I think that what I have to say still holds water even without it. It's just instead of being as literal, it can be a little more metaphorical.
Don't get me wrong, you still feel good about it.
In Turning Red, we're told that the panda emerges whenever Meilin experiences a lot of emotions. So basically whenever emotions take control. That was the same for her mother when she was younger. When under the influence of strong emotions, the panda emerges. So what we need to find is the difference between Meilin and her mother, Ming, when she was younger, at the times when this change was happening and when the panda was first emerging. But before we go searching through Turning Red, trying to find any clues we can to how it was for a younger Ming, I think there's another Pixar movie out there that gives us a lot of information that can really help us in understanding what's happening behind the scenes for Meilin and her mother. A movie that also deals with the emotional journey of a young lady during a time of her life where things are changing a lot. A movie where the emotions are literally the main characters.
Maybe it's nice on the inside.
Of course, I'm talking about Inside Out, where the emotions of joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger try to help navigate a difficult time in the life of a young girl named Riley. Now, assuming this is roughly how a mind works in the Pixar world can go a long way to helping us decipher what is happening here. In Inside Out, we see the emotions at a large control board with a whole bunch of buttons. And they use those buttons to trigger different responses in their human, according to which emotion is at the control board at the time.
Well, I just saved our lives. Yeah, you're welcome.
We also see that each person has a primary emotion, one that takes the lead when something unexpected happens, or when things seem to be getting out of control. For Riley, that emotion is joy. For Riley's mother, it's sadness. For her father, it's anger. It doesn't mean that they're happy, sad, or angry all the time. It just means that their natural disposition, when faced with something new, will tend towards those emotions.
This looks new.
For Meilin, I think it's pretty obvious that her primary emotion, like Riley, is joy. When she's narrating her life to the audience, and there's no other characters around, she shows a general happiness over her situation. Yes, she does show sadness and some anger when she transforms into a panda, and even some fear. But honestly, who wouldn't when faced with such an odd situation as that? Meilin's willingness to show all those emotions just shows that the joy inside of her isn't controlling it 100% of the time. It is giving time to the other emotions. But when all things are stable, joy is the one that shows forth for Meilin. For Meilin's mother, Ming, we have to go a little deeper. But I still think we can get an idea of her emotional pecking order. She shows some joy and some disgust at times, but I think we can quickly rule those out as they really aren't very dominant throughout the course of the film. And although we see a younger version of her crying in the trees during the movie, I think we can see during complicated situations that that is not her first response. That leaves fear or anger. And I do think we have enough information to make a determination between those two. It comes down to how she reacts when she comes across Meilin's notebook and when she comes across Meilin's secret business materials under her bed. In both those situations, her eyes go wide. Her eyes are darting all over the place. She's trying to figure out what is happening and process what's happening to her in that moment. She's faced with something new, and her immediate response is fear. For the mother, however, I think there's something more there. Fear is her first response, but it doesn't take long for fear to hand the controls over to anger. And when anger is at the buttons, it does not hold back. She storms off to a convenience shop to confront a young boy, or she dashes off to the party to find Meilin. It's almost as if her anger doesn't know how to react in any way other than just a big way. As if it never learned how to navigate these situations appropriately, but instead is just walking up to that control board and slamming down on the biggest, reddest button it can find. In fact, that's exactly what I think anger is doing here. And the reasons come down to her interactions with her own mother. We learn that young Ming had a relationship with her mother, similar to what Meilin had with her. They did everything together and were two peas in a pod. Both Ming and Meilin came of age and had to face the panda dilemma. And both of their mothers tried to control the situation in the way that they knew how. But therein lies the difference. Meilin, after first becoming a panda, is still allowed to go to school. Her mother tries to check in on her, but in a way that allows for a little bit of distance and allows Meilin a way to escape still. After the debacle at school, Meilin is put into a room with just a little mattress and allowed a safe space to get used to her panda. But once she figures out how to control the panda, the mother allows her to go right back to school, right back to her friends, alone. I don't believe young Ming had the same freedoms with her mother. When Grandma arrives to help out with Meilin, she immediately tells Ming that she can never let Meilin out of her sight. She later reminds Ming that this time in a girl's life requires discipline. I think these lines show us the way that she handled her own daughters when the pandas arrived. For young Ming, who lived in constant fear of disappointing her mother, she needed an outlet to express her other emotions. But with the constant supervision of her mother, young Ming didn't have a way to let her anger learn the controls. So when it did make it up to the control panel, it just slammed down on the panda button as hard as it could.
That's it! No, free!
But Josh, I hear you saying, couldn't anger have had a chance to learn the controls before the panda showed up? I'm glad you asked that, and the answer is a resounding no. You see, in Inside Out, we see that the control board changes over time. At the beginning, we see the emotions just have a single button to work with.
And that was just the beginning.
By the time Riley is 11, the emotions have some options. At the end of Inside Out, however, we see that a brand new control board is being installed, and this thing is sprawling.
Your new expanded console is up and running.
It has far more buttons than the previous panel had, most of which are unlabeled, leaving the emotions the need to kind of start over, figuring out which buttons to press, which buttons to leave alone. If during that time Ming's fear never lets anger experience the board and learn the appropriate buttons, well then it just makes sense that fear would just be smashing down on whatever button it can find. And if that board should happen to have a big red button, now, Meilin should get a lot of credit for how she handles her own panda. If the panda comes out as a result of the emotions hitting buttons on the big unlabeled control board, well then the best way to avoid that would be for them not to hit any buttons at all. And when are the emotions not hitting buttons?
You know what I've realized? Riley hasn't had lunch, remember?
And what does Meilin do to keep her panda from coming out? Boom! When Meilin is focused on visualizing her friends, her emotions are away from the control board, so they can't accidentally release the panda. Then when she's away from the stresses of her mother or her situation or whatever it is, then she's able to give time to each of the emotions, give them the freedom to learn the buttons, and encouraging them to learn which ones actually release the panda and which ones don't. And in the end, this leaves her with such great control over that panda that she can even pick and choose which body parts turn panda and which ones remain human, which seems to be an ability that was unprecedented with the rest of her family.
Not going out like that, are you?
So what do you think? Is Meilin's mother's panda a product of built-up anger? Is joy Meilin's primary emotion? Is there a place where I can get one of those panda shirts? Let me know in the comment section down below. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for coming.